Welcome to ShareTreck. I'm Jack. And with me today is Dianne. And we're diving into some really interesting insights you might remember. A while back, we talked about that amazing gene therapy for that rare childhood illness. Well, turns out there might be some risks involved, some serious risks.
You're talking about SKYSONA, right?
Yeah.
From CLD. It was like a miracle, especially for young boys with this really severe neurological condition.
Yeah, exactly. But now the FDA is saying there's some pretty serious concerns about cancer risks that are linked to SKYSONA. So that's what we're going to unpack today.
It is complicated. There have been reports of some patients developing blood cancers, like really serious ones, myelodysplastic syndrome, and acute myeloid leukemia after treatment with SKYSONA.
And we're not just talking about a few cases, are we?
No, unfortunately. Out of the 67 children who received SKYSONA in the clinical trials, 7 developed blood cancers. That's over 10%. Yeah. And tragically, some of those cases were fatal. Others needed bone marrow transplants.
Wow. So it's not just like, potential side effects. We're talking about like complications that are life-threatening years after the initial treatment.
Exactly. And what's scary is these cancers are showing up like 14 to 92 months after the treatment. It's not immediate. It could be years, which makes it so hard to manage.
Okay, so how has the FDA responded to these reports? Because obviously they initially approved this therapy, but now there's this massive safety concern. So have they, backtracked?
Well, they're taking it seriously. The FDA has started an investigation, and they're telling healthcare providers to think hard about other treatment options before they use SKYSONA. Like, for example, stem cell transplants. If the patient has a good match...
So they're not pulling it.
Yeah.
So they're basically saying, okay, hold on, let's look at everything else first.
Exactly. And to really make sure that everyone understands how serious these risks are, they've added what's called a boxed warning to SKYSONA's prescribing information.
Okay, so for those of us who don't speak FDA, what does a boxed warning mean?
So it's the strongest warning that the FDA can issue for a medication. It's literally a black box around the warning in the drug's label so that everyone sees it because it's a serious concern. And in this case, it's about the risk of these blood cancers.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that's a huge red flag.
Yeah.
For doctors and patients who are thinking about this treatment. And what of the kids who have already been given SKYSONA? What do they do?
Well, the FDA is recommending lifelong monitoring for all patients. This means regular blood counts every 3 months to check for anything unusual and assessments for clonal expansion.
Okay. Clonal expansion, I have to admit, it sounds like a sci-fi movie.
Yeah. It is a bit technical, but basically it means that there's a group of cells with the same genetic abnormality that are growing quickly. And that can be a sign that cancer might be developing. So by monitoring for that, doctors can hopefully catch it early.
Right. So it's all about monitoring and early detection.
Exactly.
Okay. So this is obviously a big deal for BlueBird Bio, the company behind SKYSONA. This can't be good for them.
It has been a tough time. For BlueBird Bio, financially, it's been a roller coaster. On the one hand, they actually beat their EPS loss estimates for the third quarter.
Okay, now I'm lost. What does that even mean? Beat EPS loss estimates. Are they making money?
Sorry. Financial terms can be confusing. EPS stands for earnings per share. And right now, BlueBird Bio is actually losing money, but they lost less than analysts thought they would.
Okay. So good news, but still bad news.
Yeah, but that's not all. They also missed their sales estimates, meaning they made less money than expected. And on top of that, they're going through their cash really quickly. They've said they're going to restructure to try and cut costs and reach a point where they're breaking even by the second half of 2025.
So break even, meaning spending as much as they're bringing in.
Right. And to do that, they have to make and deliver a lot more of their gene therapies, around 40 per quarter. They're also trying to get more funding because right now, their cash will only last until the first quarter of 2025.
Wow. Okay. So they're really in a tough spot. They're trying to save lives with these therapies, but they're also running out of money.
It's definitely high stakes. And it makes you think, what does this mean for gene therapy if a company with such an amazing treatment is struggling to survive?
That's a great question, and one we should definitely explore. But first, let's look at what JP Morgan is saying about BlueBird Bio. Because they haven't been quiet about their concern.
No, they haven't. JP Morgan recently downgraded BlueBird's rating to underweight. which doesn't sound good. They're especially worried about how little cash BlueBird Bio has and the fact that they're still operating with negative gross margins.
Negative what?
Sorry, gross margin is basically the profit a company makes after they pay for the costs of making and selling their products. So a negative gross margin means they're losing money on every product they sell.
Oh, that doesn't sound sustainable.
No, it's not. And that's why JP Morgan is so pessimistic about BlueBird Bio. They don't see how they can avoid becoming a going concern.
Okay, another term I don't know.
Basically, it means a company that might go out of business within the next 12 months.
So even though they have this revolutionary treatment, they could go bankrupt.
Yes, it shows just how complicated it is to bring these new therapies to market. It's not just about science, it's about business too.
Right. It's a reminder that even the most promising medical discoveries can run into some serious roadblocks. And it makes you think, how do we balance the benefits of these treatments with the need for safety and making sure it all makes sense financially?
Absolutely. It's a conversation that needs to involve everyone. Scientists, regulators, investors, and patients to make sure we're doing this right.
That's a great point. So this is clearly a complex situation with no easy answers. But before we get into those bigger questions, let's take a step back and actually talk about the science behind Skysona and CALD. So what exactly is this disease and how does this gene therapy work?
Okay, so CALD, or cerebral adrenoleukodystrophy, is a rare genetic disorder that mainly affects young boys, though girls can also be affected. It's caused by a mutation in a gene called ABCD1. This gene makes a protein that helps break down certain fats in the body.
Okay, so if the gene's mutated, then what happens? Why is it such a big problem?
Well, when the gene isn't working properly, these fats, they're called very long-chain fatty acids. They start to build up in the brain and adrenal glands. And this buildup is toxic. It damages the myelin sheath, which is the protective covering around nerve fibers.
Oh, so it's like the insulation around electrical wires
Sort of.
getting damaged, and then the signals can't travel properly.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. And as the myelin breaks down, the nerve signals in the brain get disrupted, and that
Really?
leads to a whole bunch of neurological problems.
That sounds so scary for families. What kind of symptoms do these boys experience?
It varies a lot. Some boys might have behavioral issues, learning problems, or problems with vision and hearing, but others develop really severe symptoms, like seizures, paralysis, even coma.
Oh gosh, that's awful. And it just gets worse over time, right?
Sadly, yes. CALD is a progressive disease, meaning it keeps getting worse. And there's no cure for the genetic problem itself.
And that's where Skysona was supposed to be the answer.
Yeah.
So how does it actually work to fix this?
It's pretty cool, actually. Skysona goes right to the source of the problem, the faulty ABCD1 gene. What it does is it delivers a healthy copy of that gene directly into the patient's cells.
So like replacing the bad code with good code.
Exactly. By giving the cells the right instructions, Skysona can restore production of that essential protein that breaks down the harmful fatty acids and hopefully prevent further damage.
That's amazing. So how do they give the treatment? It's not like a pill or anything, is it?
No, it's much more complex. They take the patient's stem cells from their bone marrow, and then in a lab, they modify the cells to include the healthy ABCD1 gene, and then those modified cells are put back into the patient's bloodstream.
So it's like a personalized treatment.
Exactly. The idea is that these modified stem cells will travel to the brain and other areas and start making the missing protein.
So before all these concerns came up, was there any evidence that Skysona was working?
Oh, yes. The initial trials showed some really promising results. Some boys who were treated had significant improvements in their neurological function. They could walk better, talk better, learn better.
That's gotta be incredible for those families.
It was remarkable. There were stories of boys who were in wheelchairs and they started walking, or kids who couldn't talk and they started communicating.
Wow, that's powerful. It shows the potential
Yeah.
of gene therapy to change lives, but now with these cancer concerns, it's just a lot more complicated.
It is. It reminds us that even with the most promising treatments, there can be unintended consequences that we don't see for years.
Right, so it's about balancing the good with the bad.
It is.
Especially when the bad can be so serious.
Absolutely. And it really highlights how important it is to keep monitoring, to do more research, and to be transparent so that we can make the best decisions.
Absolutely. It's about being excited, but also cautious, and always putting patient safety first.
Exactly. Yeah, it really is amazing how fast things change in medicine. Like last year, everyone was so excited about Skysona, like it was a cure. And now we're talking about all these risks.
Yeah, it really shows you that we're still figuring out gene therapy.
Yeah.
Like we're exploring this whole new world with so much potential, but also hidden dangers.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And it brings us back to that question of how we balance the excitement, being cautious, and making sure we're monitoring things long term, and really understanding the risks.
Especially when you're talking about cancer. Like this isn't just a small side effect. This is a whole other disease that these families might have to deal with years later.
Exactly. And it raises ethical questions too, like how much risk is okay? When you're dealing with a disease like CLD, is it right to offer a treatment that could cure the disease, but also has a chance of causing cancer later on?
Yeah, those are tough questions. There's no easy answers. It's about weighing the potential good against the potential bad.
Right. And that's why informed consent is so important. These families need to have all the information, the good and the bad, so they can make the best decision for their child.
Yeah, informed consent is key. But it's also about support. These families need to know that they're not alone, that there are resources out there to help them make these tough choices.
Absolutely. It's not just about giving the treatment. It's about providing care for the whole family.
So where do we go from here? What are the next steps for researchers and the FDA and for these families?
Well, for researchers, I think the focus needs to be on understanding why these cancers are happening. Like, what's the mechanism? Is there something about SKYSONA itself that's causing this? We need to figure that out so we can find ways to make it safer.
So it's about digging deeper.
Exactly. And they'll also be looking at new ways to deliver the gene therapy and new gene editing techniques that might be more precise and have less risk.
And what about the FDA? What's their role moving forward?
Well, they're going to keep monitoring the situation, and they'll be looking at all the new data, and they might change their recommendations about who should get SKYSONA, or they might require even closer monitoring.
So it's a constantly evolving situation.
Yes.
Okay. And what about the families?
Yeah.
What advice would you give them as they're trying to decide whether or not to use SKYSONA?
I think the most important thing is to talk to their doctors, to get all the information, ask questions, and really think about the risks and benefits.
So make informed decisions.
Exactly. And remember, there's no right or wrong answer. It's about what's best for their child and their family. And knowing that with gene therapy, there are no guarantees.
Right. It's about understanding the uncertainty.
Yes.
And I think this brings us to a bigger point. This whole situation with SKYSONA shows us that science isn't always straightforward. There are going to be setbacks, unexpected challenges, tough decisions.
Absolutely.
So it's about learning from those challenges and always putting patients first.
I agree. And it takes all of us working together.
Okay, so I think now's a good time to talk about BlueBird Bio's financial situation, because that's a big part of this story, especially if it affects their ability to actually make these treatments.
You're right. Their financial health is directly tied to their ability to innovate.
What's the latest? Are they doing okay?
Well, like we said before, they did report a smaller loss than expected for the third quarter, so that's good. But their overall revenue was lower than expected, and their cash is running out. They only have enough to operate until the first quarter of 2025.
That's not a lot of time.
No, it's not. That's why they're restructuring, to try and cut costs.
Yeah.
And reach that break-even point.
Right.
They're trying to cut expenses and increase revenue by making and delivering more treatments.
Okay.
But they hit another roadblock. They tried to do a reverse stock split, but they didn't get enough shareholder support.
Okay, hold on. What's a reverse stock split?
So basically, it's a way for companies to increase their stock price by reducing the number of shares. Sometimes it makes the company look better to investors, and it can help them raise more money.
So it's like a way to make themselves more attractive.
Exactly. But they couldn't do it, which means they have fewer options for raising money.
And that's why JP Morgan is so worried.
Yes.
They're saying BlueBird Bio could go out of business.
It's definitely a risky situation. They have these financial problems at the same time as these safety concerns.
Yeah, it really shows you how complicated this all is. You have the science, the regulations, and the money.
It's a lot to balance.
And it makes you wonder, how do we create a system that supports both scientific progress and financial stability?
That's a big question. I think it requires us to be really thoughtful about how we invest in these therapies, making sure they're scientifically sound and also financially sustainable.
It's about finding that sweet spot.
Yes.
So this has been a really insightful conversation. Thanks for breaking all this down for us.
You're welcome.
It's clear that the story of SKYSONA and BlueBird Bio is far from over.
It's definitely a story worth following.
It's a reminder that we're still learning so much
Yeah.
about the potential of gene therapy and the challenges we face in making it a reality.
It's a journey.
It is.
Yeah.
It's amazing to think last year we were celebrating SKYSONA,
Yeah.
and now it's all about managing risk and like the future of gene therapy.
Yeah, things change fast. And I think it's good we're talking about this because gene therapy it's promising, but it's not without its challenges.
So, we've covered a lot today. The science behind SKYSONA and CALD, the FDA's response, BlueBird Bio's financial situation. What do you think is the most important takeaway for our listeners?
I think it's that science is not always a straight line. There will be setbacks, unexpected things. We can't just get excited about the breakthrough. We have to think long term.
Yeah, like be hopeful but also realistic.
Exactly. And it's not just about the science either. We have to create a system that supports responsible innovation.
Like, how do we make sure that these companies developing these amazing therapies actually have the resources to succeed?
It's a tough question. I think it starts with collaboration. Scientists, regulators, investors, patients. We all need to work together.
Right. We have to think about the whole process.
Exactly.
And be honest about the risks and benefits, the costs, the ethical considerations.
Transparency is key.
So patients can make informed decisions.
Absolutely.
And we need to keep investing in research.
Yes.
Not just to develop new treatments, but to understand the long-term effects.
Exactly. This whole situation with SKYSONA shows us how important long-term monitoring is.
And we need to support these companies, like BlueBird Bio,
Yes, they're taking big risks.
to develop these life-changing therapies.
We don't want to stifle innovation.
It's a balancing act.
It is.
Supporting innovation, but also being responsible
Yeah,
and putting patients first.
exactly.
So that's our message today. Gene therapy is amazing, but it's a journey.
It is.
It requires careful planning, open communication, and everyone working together.
Well said.
Well, Dianne, thanks again for joining us today. It's been great.
My pleasure.
And to our listeners, keep exploring these issues, ask questions, and let's keep talking about the future of gene therapy. What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe to help us grow the ShareTreck community. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep those questions coming first.